Greetings from the Bullitt County Historical Society. Today, we are doing an interview with longtime Statesboro businessman Cy Waters and his grandson Lee Waters. Both of these men add so much to our quality of life, both business-wise, religion-wise, agricultural-wise, and just all-around great Bullitt County citizens. Stay tuned for what's going to be a great interview.
Well, I was born in Waycross.
Waycross, okay.
In 1934. That makes me 89 years old. I'm pushing 90. We moved here during World War II. And then we started the furniture business there in Twin City. And we actually ran routes and would sell off of the truck different items. And World War II came along and we couldn't get gas. You couldn't get tires. You don't remember that, Virginia. So we had to move to the town that we had the most accounts in, and that was Statesboro. We would buy vehicles that really would hardly run, but it had new tires on it, and a kind of black market. That was the way they would. So we'd buy the vehicles just for the tires. And we ran furniture routes to different towns, Millen, Sylvania, wherever, Claxton. And we would pedal off of the truck, sell chairs, radios, whatever, and we'd come back take orders and come back the next week and deliver those orders. It was a lot different. Statesboro at that time was a lot different. We moved down there on Woodrow Avenue. That's right there where the Baptist church is now. And Dr. Fred Fletcher lived next to us.
Okay.
And there's two houses right there. You could almost reach out the window and touch somebody from the other side, But that was Dr. Fletcher, and they had one child. His name was Jerry, Dr. Jerry Fletcher. He was really a smart kid, and we kind of adopted him, I guess. And, he was a grade behind me at school, and he would say, "How's the sixth grade?" I said, "It's pretty hard, Jerry." I said, "You're going to have to study." He said, "Well, that's what you said about the fifth grade." It was come to find out it wasn't the grade, it was who was in the grade. That made the difference. But that's when the high school was down there on Grady Street. Yeah, Grady Street. We were lucky to have a group of boys, and we were outstanding football team. And I remember we played Savannah High School, the first time Statesboro School had ever played a Savannah school. And we were going down there on the yellow school bus, and they passed out a paper, and the paper had the highlights that country bumpkins come to town. So that set us on fire. And but we played for the South Georgia Championship in high school. We played Jessup down there, and they outscored us by 6 points, but they had 13 men. They had an extra man, and he was a referee. In high school, I had 11 scholarships, college scholarships to play football. And I chose going to Furman. And I went to Furman, and every night Lou Cordell at Georgia Military College would call up at Furman, and he wanted me to come play with Georgia Military College. And I said, "Coach," I said, "they don't appreciate you calling up here." He said, "I don't give a GD what they appreciate." He said, I want you over here." So I did. I later on played with Georgia Military College, and glad I did. It was a military school, and we had to go and serve so many years in the Army, and that was kind of a boost for me. It was a good training school. Well, I had a sister. Her name was Ann. She was the middle child. I was the youngest child, and Hal was the oldest child. We all went to the University of Georgia, and Ann was a majorette at the University of Georgia. And but Hal, he went to Georgia, and he is a singer. He sang in the a cappella choir there at the University of Georgia. And I later on went to Georgia, but out of high school, I played football and actually baseball too. Had an offer to go play with the Philadelphia Phillies. I was a catcher. Well, I got a degree from engineering school there at the University of Georgia, and
in agriculture, right? It was
an agricultural school, but it was an engineering department. Gotcha. And that's later on I went to work in Sylvania with the ASC office, and that's what we built ponds and ditches and terraces and whatever, the ASC office there. I really liked doing the work there in Scribner County, but my mom and dad and Hal were running the furniture business in Statesboro, and it wasn't doing too good. So I felt like I was needed there. So I came to work, and we were actually down there on the corner, and that property belonged to a Brannon. And I was walking up one day up to the bank to make a deposit, in this building right here was a picture show, state picture show. You go to the picture show for about 13 cents, I think is what the fee was. But anyway, it had a for sale sign on it. Now, my people didn't believe they were afraid to extend and buy something. And, but I didn't know better. I bought this piece of property. And then next door was a farmer's furniture, Lonnie Griner. And he raised crickets up on the second floor, and it caught on fire and burned my building down.
And that was in what year did that happen?
And his too. Curtis Youngblood had a store over there, and this store burned down, and I mean, I just exhausted with what to do. And he came to me and he said, I'll let you have whatever furniture I got, you can come get and start your business again. So I appreciated Curtis Youngblood for that at the time. And nobody would ever know what difficult times were, but it was difficult times back then, yeah. And then the building next door to us belonged to Hamovitz, and he sold clothing, and that was my second purchase. I bought the Hamovitz building. And then the next building over there was Eli Hodges ran a fish store, him and Emmett Deal. And they sold fish and poultry goods and so forth. And I bought that. Then on down was the one on the corner. We bought it and actually ran out of that location and it belonged to the Brannons. And but anyway, to get back to the Ike Mickovitz and myself, I told Ike, well, I told y'all a while ago, we were going to have to buy some property when the mall was coming because they were providing parking, and we didn't really have much parking. So we got busy and bought what was called Blue Front, and there's a historical marker down there, which is interesting. And we bought all of the pieces except the one on the corner up here, which was vital to the operation of the parking lot. And it belonged to a Brandon that lived in Atlanta, and he wrote me a letter back that he no way would consider selling that property, that it was a gift to him by his parents. And I turned the page on the back side, it had P.S. make me an offer. So we bought that property, and Ike and I and the other merchants began to chip in, and we paid for it. And we borrowed the money from it was the Sea Island Bank at the time, Synovus Bank now. We would go to Leesville, South Carolina, and they'd have an auction there about twice a month. And they were bringing furniture down from New York City, and they'd auction it off. Well, I would look in some of these dressers or whatever, and it would have the address of the people in New York City, and I knew that's where it was coming from. And so I would just got on the plane and flew to New York City and took a taxi into Brooklyn, because that's where one of the addresses was, Brooklyn, Bernstein's. And I walked in this place and I saw the name Bernstein's, and they had it was a hotel full of used furniture. So I bought the whole hotel full of furniture, and I got a truck come in, several trucks would come in and haul it out, and so I'd go up there about once a month and buy that used furniture. And it was good stuff. It was good furniture. And this is another story. I sold a dining room suit to the Methodist Church, and Shippy was the fellow's name at the time. He was a pastor, and he loved that dining room suit. But some of the people didn't think that the church ought to buy a used dining room suit. And and I said, well, I'll get it appraised. So I had a fellow from Savannah come down and appraise it. I think I got about $1,200 for it, and it appraised for about $7,500. So I didn't hear no more from the congregation about the dining room suit.
I guess that was fine enough.
That was fine enough, yeah. New York was so full that whatever went in, something had to come out. I mean, it just wasn't enough room for. And they were selling and trading in the used furniture. And probably what they were trading in was better than what they were buying. But business has grown, and our business has grown with it. If you didn't have that business, we may not be here. But
it gave opportunity, didn't it?
Yeah, and we sell L.A. Waters Furniture Company. You would be astounded at the amount of merchandise we sell in Savannah and Claxton. All of those surrounding towns come to Statesboro.
And that's good for everybody's comfort.
That's good for everybody.
Yeah, they come and buy a dining room suit for you and buy gas.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go next door and buy some clothes and some shoes. Then they're going to eat lunch. So it's good for everybody.
It's a hub for sure.
Yes.
But you look at Statesboro and Bullock County, and then you drive to Swainsboro and look at Emmanuel County, and they have not grown. You go to Claxton, it hadn't grown. But Statesboro, and I think one of the main reasons is Georgia Southern University.
Most definitely.
My daddy went to the stockyard and bought a little old pony, a spotted pony. His name was Pal. And the deal was Ann could have him one day, and Hal could have him one day, and I could have him one day. Well, as time went on, they wouldn't look after the pony and wasn't very interested in it. So I had the pony, and I had a buggy. I would hook that pony up and drive the buggy through town. I had a lot of friends that liked to ride, go caribou riding. And Prince Preston, he was a congressman. He had a horse, and he was a little bit too much horse for Prince Preston. And I could ride him, and nobody else could. So that was a second step, and he was a nice horse. And we would go to Lexington, Kentucky, to what they call the Tattersall sales. And it was a big thing up there. And we would buy some horses that other people couldn't handle. And I had a knack, I could handle them. And we bought a lot of good horses. I got the one on the wall up there, probably one of the 5 best saddlebred horses of all times. I bought him because when I bought him, the fella said, "Son," said, "you be careful, this horse will hurt you." But I didn't have any trouble with him. Laura, I bought a pony up there, and Daddy was standing inside of him, and it was a gray pony. That's him right there on the wall. And he said, "Buy that pony." I said, "That's my bid." He said, "I don't care." I said, "Bid again." I said, "I want that horse for my daughter, Laura." And we did, and we won the world championship with that horse. And we showed him in Lexington, Kentucky. We would start showing in Miami and end up at Louisville, Kentucky, where they had the world championship class. And I mean, we would win them all.
What about your sons?
Well, Anthony was a good jockey, and Laura, my daughter, was a good jockey. Yeah. And they would work with the horses every day, and they knew them. And I remember that gray pony was showing at Lexington, and what they call the Red Mile. And they had the world champion in that class, and the second world champion, and some other ponies, and Laura was in there. And she just really wore them out. And they tied the current world champion first. And you could hear a pin drop in that. They'd have 40 or 50,000 people coming to those things. And they tied Laura second, and they all stood up and applauded. And she went out of the ring, and they kept applauding. And they asked her to come back in and make the victory pace.
At the height of the horse business for y'all, how many horses did y'all have? Because it truly became a sideline business for y'all.
We have had as many as 55 horses at one time. And we would go to a horse show almost every weekend. They don't have them now like they did then. But we would go to a horse show. We'd leave early in the morning, drive a truck over to South Carolina, wherever the show was, get back that night about 1 or 2 o'clock, and get unloaded. Ida would say, "All right," says, "you can go and stay out all night, but Sunday morning you get them children up and you go into church." She actually was raised in Brunswick, come from Brunswick. And Ann Cone and Ruth Cone, her 2 sisters, were living here in Statesboro. And she moved up here with her mother to go to Georgia Southern. And I met her at the Methodist Church. And one thing led to another. I still eat supper with her.
Yeah. she cooks you a good meal, doesn't she?
She cooks good meals. Yeah.
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 And y'all been married how many years now? Y'all were married in what year?
Well, that's a marker where it was 60, and that's been about 10 years ago.
Gosh, was y'all on 65 or so, something
Yes.
like that?
Yeah, something like
And y'all
that.
got married at First Baptist Church.
First
right?
Baptist Church, yeah.
Gotcha.
That was before they built the new church that they got now. On Saturday morning, I would take my bird dogs and walk out to where the Forest Heights Country Club is. It was nothing there at that time, and I'd go hunting there, bird hunting, and the dogs would walk right alongside of me, and I'd bring a sandwich with me and sit down at dinner time. I'd eat the sandwich, and the dogs would lay down that side of me, and it would be dark when I get back home. And but I showed, and where's that picture? Yeah, right here at Waynesboro. I won the bird dog championship at Waynesboro, Georgia, and that's the bird dog capital of the world. Yeah, and it said Lower Water Junior with Jack, winner of the Georgia State Shooting Dog State, held at Waynesboro, Georgia, March the 20th of 59.
About that.
Jack had 4 cubby finds and 2 singles in 30 minutes.
Wow.
I remember Bruce Young and I were at the Methodist church, and we were taking up collections that day. And when it was over with, he and I was on the back porch there, and I said, Bruce, and the college professor at that time, who was the president?
Yeah. Dale Lick.
Dale Lick. Dale Lick. Dale said that he would not ask the people in Statesboro for more contributions if they would give the contribution to the school for the academics. And so I said, Bruce, that leaves out the football program. He said, yeah. He said, that's. I said, but he did not say that we couldn't collect money for the football. And that's where it started. And we rounded up some people that were interested in it. And that's where the Dirty Dozen thing came into play. We had interviewed some coaches, and one of them was Eric Russell at the time. And we thought that was really, and it was a big thing to have Eric Russell start the football program at Georgia Southern. And we had decided that that was who we wanted. And Eric was at the University of Georgia at that time, and they had just won the national championship. And Vince Dooley was the coach, and Eric was the assistant coach. And Rick Mandes was kind of the PR man out at Georgia Southern. And he pulled up in the back, and he said, I want you to call, and let's see if we can get Eric Russell for our football coach. I said, well, give me his phone number and let me put my brain in gear, and I'll call him later on. So I did. I called up at the athletic department at the University of Georgia, and a little lady answered the phone, and I said, I want to speak to Eric Russell, please. And she right snappily said, well, he is not available, because they knew what we were doing. And I could hear somebody in the background say, who's calling? And this little girl said, Cy Waters in Statesboro. He said, put him on in the back office. So I talked to Eric, and I said, Eric, we want you to be our head football coach. And I said, I think you want to come. He said, yeah, I'd love to come. He said, but we've been here for 17 years, and I got a house and the payments I can take care of, and I don't know whether Gene would want to come or not. And I said, well, is it a house that's the problem? He said, yeah, probably so. And I said, well, Ert, you come down and we will provide you with a house. So I said, Ert, be in my office at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'll have somebody to go show Gene the houses, and you pick what you want. And at 10 o'clock that next day, he was standing right there in that doorway. In the meantime, I went up to Jack Wilson was president of the Sea Island Bank at the time. I hung up and went up there to talk to Jack Wilson and ask him if he would loan us the money. And he said, you got it. So I come back through Ronnie Pope, and Ronnie said, count me in. I'll help you make the payments. And Morris Lupton, I called Morris, and he said, count me in. So the three of us provided the payments for Ert Russell's house. And he showed up that next morning at 10 o'clock, and he picked the house out. And I knew we had a football coach at that time and a football program. And he was coming down to accept the responsibility for being the head football coach. And he got caught speeding. And he told the fella, I can't remember that patrolman's name. He said, I'm Ert Russell. Said, I'm going to Georgia Southern. I was just going too fast. And he said, you going to Georgia Southern? He said, yeah, except the football coach. He said, you follow me, I'll give you a siren escort. So that's what he did.
That's the best story ever, Si. I love that one.
Well, he came down to make an acceptance speech at the Hannah Field House. In the meantime, I went over to Walmart and bought a football because we didn't have a football, and gave it to Ert, and he held up the football and said that was his. But you were talking about that chair being Ert's chair. But every Saturday when we'd play a game, Ert would come in here and sit in that chair, and we would go on with whatever business we were doing and wouldn't pay him any attention, but he was getting his mindset for that football. And he always smoked a cigar.
Did you let him smoke in here, Si?
And I said, Ert, you come in here anytime you want to, but leave the daggum cigar at home.
I don't blame you, Si.
So he did. I mean, that cigar smoke would
be here still today.
knock you down when you come in. Yeah. We had a horse van, and when we would go, Georgia Southern would go play somebody in Florida, wherever it might be. I carried to haul the equipment in the horse van. And they were always glad to see me come because they wasn't sure I was going to make it. Statesburg grew remarkably well. It's unbelievable when the football program came on. Nobody knew where Georgia Southern, never heard of it until we began to play football and win. It is the main stream for growth in this area, no doubt. But I think a lot of the towns had the opportunity to have a university, but Statesboro and Bullock County gave them the land, so they came here.
Sure. Gave them the land and a lot of money.
And the money, yeah. Statesboro is still growing unbelievably fast. And it was at that time growing. But now, I don't know where it's going to stop. Well, imagine the best thing that ever happened to me was when I moved from Twin Cities to Statesboro. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a big move. But I I've done a lot of things in my life, and I got knees now. I can't hardly walk outside. But if I had it all to do over again, I don't think I'd do it different. And nothing like working hard.